if he does, he will know that there are deprived areas in our rural communities, in our coastal communities, and across the south, and this government will relentlessly support them, because we are a government that will deliver for people across the United Kingdom.
And when they said, why does he fear he's going to be murdered by his wife's family, it was because he'd murdered his wife. And there might be repercussions back in Romania.
Everyone should watch the video and make their own minds up. In public, he claims he wants to level up the north.
It does feel like it's a joke now. Like, everyone knows it's a joke. You've got serious criminals who know that they can exploit this absurd setup in order to stay in the country.
In the next few minutes, you're going to witness a political implosion that sent shockwaves through Westminster. We'll show you the exact moment Keir Starmer's claims about farmer support unraveled, leading to unprecedented scenes in Parliament. You'll hear the damning evidence, see the reactions of stunned MPs, and understand why this incident could be a turning point in British politics. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear picture of what really happened and what it means for Starmer's future. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the videos. In a moment that would soon become infamous, Keir Starmer confidently declared to Parliament, "That's why we put £5 billion to support farmers in the budget." The statement, delivered with an air of assurance, immediately set off alarm bells among opposition MPs. As Starmer's words echoed through the chamber, a palpable sense of disbelief spread like wildfire.
There's something smelly, there's something really very odd about the whole Starmer arrangement, whether it be his personal life, whether it be his political life, whether it be the way that he comports himself. There's just something very wrong.
Government currently allows very rich people to live here but register abroad for tax purposes. I don't need to explain to the Prime Minister how non-dom status works. He already knows all about that.
About him as Prime Minister of this country. And so it's proved. And so with every single week, as we've been saying, something else happens. I mean, I agree with Tim, I don't think I've ever remembered a terrible government which has just done one misstep after another.
Yeah.
I am glad, Mr. Speaker, that the party opposite the honourable gentleman has finally realised that spending does need to be paid for. It is a novel concept for the party opposite. This government is going to restore economic stability, and we will do it in a fair and compassionate way.
The claim was not just bold, it was downright audacious. Starmer's assertion of a £5 billion farming fund stood in stark contrast to the reality painted by the government's own farming minister. While Starmer boasted of substantial support, the minister had made it clear that farming was far from a priority for the current administration. This glaring discrepancy raised serious questions about Starmer's grasp on agricultural policy and his ability to present accurate information to the public. As Starmer continued his speech, the reaction in the chamber was telling. MPs exchanged meaningful glances, their expressions a mix of confusion and skepticism. Some shook their heads in disbelief, while others leaned in to whisper to their colleagues. The body language spoke volumes. Something was amiss, and Starmer's credibility was hanging by a thread. But the real bombshell was yet to come. It wasn't just that Starmer's claim contradicted the government's stance. It flew in the face of cold, hard facts. The farming minister had recently revealed a damning piece of information. The government had failed to spend £300 million already allocated for farming. This revelation cast a long shadow over Starmer's £5 billion promise. How could he justify such an enormous sum when existing funds remained untouched? Experts were quick to weigh in on the feasibility of Starmer's proposed funding. Their verdict was damning. Given the current economic context and the government's track record on agricultural spending, the £5 billion figure seemed not just unlikely, but practically impossible. The experts' analysis added fuel to the fire, turning skepticism into outright disbelief. As the uproar in the chamber grew, Starmer found himself on the back foot. His attempts to defend his statement fell flat, each word seemingly digging him deeper into a hole of his own making. The more he tried to explain, the more he appeared to lose control of the narrative. The once confident leader now looked flustered and out of his depth. The incident didn't just raise questions about this particular claim, it sparked a broader wave of skepticism among Starmer's own party members. Some began to question his leadership, wondering if this gaffe was a one-off or indicative of a larger problem.
Named because it's probably against his human rights to be named. Basically, an Albanian criminal allowed to stay in Britain partly because his son will not eat foreign chicken nuggets. This was his distaste for the type of chicken nuggets that are available abroad. I mean, are we really not?
He's on the side of working people, but in private he says something very different. Over the summer, he was secretly recorded at a garden party in Tunbridge Wells.
How do they take account of some lawyer who says, I believe, my lord, in other countries the chicken nuggets are not of such high quality as the ones in this country, therefore I must argue that for the boy to be made to eat them would be completely untenable and against his human rights.
To a group of Tory members that he personally moved money away from deprived areas to wealthy places instead.
The consistency of his policies came under scrutiny, with party members asking themselves if they could trust their leader's words. As the murmurs of discontent grew into a deafening roar, the House of Commons transformed into a scene of unprecedented chaos. The first shouts of shame echoed through the chamber, catching everyone off guard. Members of Parliament from all sides of the political spectrum exchanged bewildered glances, unsure of what was unfolding before their eyes. The confusion quickly gave way to a collective surge of outrage as the gravity of Starmer's deception sank in. Starmer, visibly rattled by the mounting chorus of disapproval, attempted to press on with his speech, but his words fell on deaf ears as the shouting only intensified. It was a stark indicator that he had lost control not just of the narrative, but of his own political destiny. The carefully crafted image of a trustworthy leader was crumbling in real time, broadcast for the entire nation to witness. The Speaker of the House, typically a figure of authority and order, found himself overwhelmed by the tumult. His repeated attempts to restore calm by banging his gavel proved futile against the tide of anger that had been unleashed. The very foundations of parliamentary decorum seemed to be shaking as MPs from Labour, Conservative, and fringe parties alike joined in a unified chorus of condemnation. This was no ordinary political misstep. The House of Commons had seen its fair share of heated debates and pointed accusations, but this moment stood apart. The sheer scale of the uproar, coupled with the context of Starmer's previous statements, created a perfect storm of political disaster. As accusations flew and demands for resignation echoed through the chamber, it became clear that this was a pivotal moment in British politics. Starmer's attempts to regain control of the situation only seemed to fuel the fire. Each word he uttered was met with increased skepticism and derision. The very MPs who had once looked to him as a beacon of hope now turned their backs, joining the swelling ranks of his critics. It was a stark reminder of how quickly political fortunes can change, especially when trust is broken. As the chaos reached its peak, with MPs on their feet, shouting and gesticulating wildly, a palpable sense of disbelief permeated the air. This was the moment Starmer's credibility crumbled before the eyes of the nation. The man who had positioned himself as the antidote to political dishonesty now stood exposed.
If he does, he will know that there are deprived areas in our rural communities, in our coastal communities, and across the south, and this government will relentlessly support them because we are a government that will deliver for people across the United Kingdom.
And when they said, why does he fear he's going to be murdered by his wife's family, it was because he'd murdered his wife. And there might be repercussions back in Romania.
Everyone should watch the video and make their own minds up. In public, he claims he wants to level up the north.
It does feel like it's a joke now. Like, everyone knows it's a joke. You've got serious criminals who know that they can exploit this absurd setup in order to stay in the country.
His own words used as evidence against him. As the dust settles on this parliamentary debacle, the ripple effects are already being felt throughout British politics. Starmer's leadership, once seen as a steady hand guiding Labour, now appears to be on shaky ground. The cracks within the party, previously papered over, are now widening into chasms. This incident has given Starmer's rivals the ammunition they've been waiting for, and the whispers of potential replacements are growing louder by the day. But the implications of this moment stretch far beyond the confines of the Labour Party. It's a stark reminder of the fragility of public trust in our political institutions. When a leader can be caught in such a blatant falsehood on the floor of Parliament, it begs the question, how many other lies have slipped through unnoticed? As voters, we're left grappling with an uncomfortable reality. If we can't trust our politicians to tell the truth about something as straightforward as budget allocations, how can we trust them with the complex challenges facing our nation? It's a sobering thought that should give us all pause. And what of Starmer himself? Can he weather this storm, or will this be the final nail in the coffin of his leadership? Only time will tell, but one thing's for certain: the chants of shame, shame will be ringing in his ears for a long time to come.